So public-private partnerships to disrupt financial crime. What, why, and how? These are the main questions that I want to give you answers today for. That is why I will be speaking today briefly about defining the public-private partnership. I want to give you a couple of insights about the notion of the term of the partnership itself. Then we will definitely discuss about the role and the impact of public-private partnerships, challenges that you might meet along the way, and of course, success stories and how the partnership should go going forward along the way and how to make it actually effective. What are the main elements that could help the public-private partnership actually bring tangible results? So without further ado, what is a public-private partnership? I think the answer itself lies within the question. We are talking about the partnership between public and private sectors. While I do acknowledge that public and private sectors, they do share common commitment towards tackling various forms of illicit financing. However, I want to note today for all of you that when it comes to the partnership and the term itself, we are talking about aligning goals on both sides, public and private sectors. When we're talking about the public sector, we can talk about the law enforcement agencies, central banks, and any other institution that forms part of the public sector. When we are talking about the private sector, as you all know, we can talk about banks, fintechs, and any other financial institutions that form the financial market in the private sector. We can also talk about the nonprofit organization when it comes, for example, for counter-terrorist financing. So there are very different members when it comes to public and private sector. Now, where is the main issue here? Intrinsically, public and private sector, they all have different organizational mandates, authorities, and cultures. That is why when we are talking about the partnership and aligning the goals from both sides, it's quite a complicated task to align goals from both sides. We all have to admit that when we are coming to the partnership, whether we can call it usually collaboration, cooperation, or coordination, intrinsically we have different goals. That is why I would actually suggest to use the term partnership quite hesitantly, as it is really difficult to align the goals from both sides. That is why I'm more prone to using such terms as collaboration or cooperation between public and private sectors when it comes to fight against financial crime generally. It's way more easier to use the term partnership in the notion of itself when we are tackling and having the partnerships that actually tackle the crimes in the narrow scope. I don't know, for example, evasion of sanctions, human trafficking. When we are tackling these forms of crimes, it's way more easier actually to align goals from both sides. So I think the main takeaway today from me that I would like that you take from this presentation is that the term partnership requires alignment on both sides, and it's really difficult to achieve. That is why collaboration, coordination, or cooperation between public and private sectors are way more, I think, suitable terms to use when we are talking about the collaboration and the partnership between public and private sectors. Now, having a public-private partnership nowadays is not nice to have, is a must-have. And from my previous work experience, and as well as I'm searching and researching this topic for quite a while now, public-private partnership can give you a targeted, coordinated, and intelligence-led approach, which forms the comprehensive approach towards financial crime. So I have named here a couple of advantages when it comes to having public-private partnerships. I'm definitely sure that there might be more to that. However, let me emphasize a couple of those moments here. First of all, avoiding loss of information. The main issue we have currently is that we all, and by we all, I mean members of the public and private sectors, does not matter whether you are a member or the representative of the financial institution or the law enforcement agency, for example, we all have different pieces of information. So we all have sort of fragmented information when it comes having information about the customer, when it comes having information about someone committing a crime, possibly. If we have lack of coordination or cooperation between public and private sectors, we risk that there will be no moment when we actually piece back all those fragmented pieces of information together. That is why the FATF, a lot of international organizations are emphasizing the fact that we need collaboration and coordination and cooperation between public and private sectors. So avoiding that loss of information, closing the loopholes of the information that we have about the customer, about the crimes, this is one of the most important goals, I think, why we should have the public-private partnership and why it is a must-have. I think what else is important to note here and to remember here is that forming PPP itself, as the Egmont Group emphasizes, is not a goal itself. If you would actually review a lot of FATF documents when it comes, I don't know, to private sector information sharing, they all emphasize the importance of the collaboration, but you will find no place saying that you have to establish public-private partnership. There is no predefined term for the collaboration mechanism. So any formal or informal mechanisms that actually work in your country, that's completely fine. So it's not that you have to have PPP just to, adhere to certain regulations. Is you need to have that collaboration mechanism that would actually bring you tangible results, which goals would actually translate into the actual impact. So that also using your resources in a targeted way, I think that's really, I think that makes a huge impact on making the fight against financial crime effective, because you cannot spread your resources everywhere. It's very difficult to fight financial crime when you're just fighting and you do not know what kind of the crimes are you fighting for. It's way easier when you have risk indicators, when you have criteria, when you have thresholds that have to be triggered or reached in order to identify particular crimes. This intelligence and this knowledge could come from the public-private collaboration that would help actually to make the fight against financial crime more effective. Okay, moving forward, building public-private partnership. Let me talk about public-private partnerships today as they are called and what are the models that can be used. Please don't think that these are, the only models that could be used. There is no one size fits all. If you have the informal mechanism, that's completely fine as well, until the moment that it actually produces tangible results and has an actual impact. But let me get back to the main 4 models that I have depicted here. So the first one, UK GEMLIT, I think everyone knows this. This is our first pilot project within UK, and it's led by the National Crime Agency, which is basically a law enforcement agency. The second model is when the public-private partnership is part of the FIU, or the Financial Intelligence Unit. It's usually as a separate department or the unit, which is basically focused mainly on establishing and developing the partnership between public and private sector, enforcing and enabling the collaboration. Then we might have the task force that is controlled by the law enforcement and central bank, and this is the case in Singapore. And we have Lithuania. I have previously worked within the Center of Excellence in Anti-Money Laundering, which is a public-private partnership, and it operates as a completely separate institution. So basically, this was the nonprofit organization that worked towards the collaboration between public and private sectors. However, it was completely separate and did not, basically wasn't the part of any FIU or any public institution. I think every and each model that I have just shortly described to you has its own advantages and disadvantages. And I think we could have another long discussion about what kind of the advantages and disadvantages we have. However, let me briefly discuss with you what are the main elements to consider when creating the public-private partnership. I think that would be an interesting moment for those who do not have any mechanism within their country, and then during development phases. So when we are talking about the creation, the public-private partnership, costs, resources, ownership, and capabilities are 4 main elements to consider. You have to be sure that you will have enough resources to run the public-private partnership or any formal, informal mechanism that you have within your country. By resources, I do not mean technology. I mean human resources, people who will actually help you run and coordinate the whole process. Costs. Depending on the model of the partnership, whether it is formal, informal, who is the owner or who is leading the partnership, you have to be sure that you will have enough money to do that. So very often, costs or budget that should be allocated to the public-private partnership depends on the political will. And we will definitely talk today more about the political emphasis that we have to put on, because a lot of decisions in terms of developing the public-private partnership may lie within political will and within political decisions. That is why I think this is intrinsically also an important element to consider when establishing the public-private partnership, and capabilities, of course, expertise and time, both from public and private sector stakeholders. Will they have time, and do they have required expertise to join, for example, different working groups that works towards tackling different crimes? I don't know, such as human trafficking, tax evasion, drug smuggling, and etc. Now, when it comes to development, there are more elements to consider. We are talking about information sharing, and we will also, in a couple of slides, talk about this as well. Very often, we need local legal gateways to enable information sharing on an operational basis, meaning on a customer-specific basis. Technology. I can assure you that technology is there, so you don't have to worry about it. There are plenty of choices to make when it comes to choosing the right technology, or even creating your one, if that's the case, and if that's the best scenario for your public-private partnership. And definitely information and privacy protection that comes along with information sharing, and communication and culture. Why I want to stress communication here is that very often it happens that different stakeholders are members of the public-private partnership, more precisely, are taking part in different working groups. So they get particular information. And I'm referring here only for the information that is considered as a strategic type of information, meaning no customer data. We are talking about the strategic type of information, such as trends, types, typologies. Make sure that if you, for example, are a representative of the financial institutions, and you have an opportunity to be part of the working group that operates within public-private partnership, make sure when you come back to your financial institution that you spread the information, cascading down all the departments, units, and giving people actually the access to the information you get from the public-private partnership. Once again, I'm talking here about strategic type of information. Let's leave aside for a couple of minutes the operational type of information. Everyone within the public or private sector, that does not matter, should have an access to the strategic type of information, which considers risk indicators, trends, types, typologies. Everyone should have an access. Do not withhold that information. It happens, unfortunately, very often. I do not say that it happens, specifically, but people having, bad thoughts, but it happens. Sometimes the information sits within one department and it does not cascade down through other departments. And it turns out that, the financial institution is part of the public-private partnership, but only a little amount of people knows about what's happening there. So please be sure that you are open and spread the information you get, strategic type one, to your colleagues within the same institution, whether you are coming from public or the private sector. What it takes to build and develop a public-private partnership. I think I have already named at least few elements that I want to show you here in this slide. However, let me briefly discuss with you the political level. I have already named to you that there might be cases where you will need political will. This might be the case when you are establishing public-private partnership. For example, you will need a decision from the parliament that such public-private partnership should be established. As a part of the FOU, as a separate institution, does not matter. At the same time, I want to reverse the situation and give you an example that public-private partnership can also serve as a platform for raising awareness and literacy along the political level. Please believe me, there will be a lot of cases where you will need decisions to be made in the parliament, legislation to be passed, for example, enabling information sharing. These will be the moments when you will need the political will and politicians having particular and certain level of awareness and literacy on AML safety issues. If you will have no political emphasis on the highest political levels, that would be very difficult to achieve. And all your legislative initiatives might be set aside, And then will be the question whether your public-private partnership is actually able to produce tangible results and have an actual impact. So from one side, you might need political will to establish public-private partnership, but please be aware that public-private partnership can also have an opportunity to raise awareness and literacy and advocate for the AML/CFT issues on a political level. I think this is one of the strongest core value of the public-private partnership as a voice from public and private sectors that can actually bring the advocacy to the political level, trying to put the emphasis on AML/CFT strategy, on AML/CFT system on a national level. So this is, I think, very important element in order to enable, and help the public-private partnership to translate goals into actual impact. Policy level, roles, responsibilities, and limits. There are cases where public-private partnership is part of the AML/CFT legislation. I think that's the case in Latvia. And I think that's a fantastic example, actually, because it's way more easier when the roles and responsibilities of the public-private partnership, which operates as a formal mechanism, when it's actually enshrined in the legislation. Then it's very clear what's the role, what kind of responsibilities and ownership public-private partnership has, and what are their limits to information sharing, for example. And on the operational level, strategy, ownership, technology plus 3Ps. By 3Ps, I mean here policy, procedures, and people. 3 elements of strength that will help you to actually build on a solid ground the public-private partnership on the operational level. Because at the end of the day, we have to, once again, to produce actual results. It's not about setting goals, it's about what impact public-private partnership can bring. If there is no impact, then there is a question whether your public-private partnership is actually working, or is it just like a formal element of the national AML/CFT strategy, for example. So why is it hard to get it right? If you have answers to all the questions that I named here, basically only 3 of them, then you will definitely get it right. If not today, then tomorrow or a couple of days after that. If you miss answer to one of these questions, then you have an issue, I would say, that you need to tackle, or the challenge that you might meet along the way. In my opinion, and once again from previous work experience and from the whole research of the topic of the public-private partnerships, and considering that I'm really a fan and a huge believer in public-private partnerships, however, I do believe that public-private partnership needs to be an integral part of the national AML/CFT strategy. So if your country does not have AML/CFT strategy on a national basis, this is the first issue to tackle, and public-private partnership once again can voice down the need to have the AML/CFT strategy on a national basis to a political level where the decisions are made. I have, I think, named more than once today, do your actions and goals translate into the actual impact? What kind of impact do you have? How do you measure your success? What are your KPIs? I think KPIs is also a very interesting topic that we could actually make, I think, another presentation on, just to brainstorm and think what kind of KPIs could be used. I know very often a lot of public-private partnership use the quantity of the STRs they get through the public-private partnership, but I do not think that makes the whole picture. In Australia, for example, the Fintel Alliance, if I'm not wrong, there was a report, the annual report from the year of 2018. So they have also sort of focused the evaluation of their public-private partnership on the performance of the public-private partnership, meaning on the developing the capabilities, both of public and private sectors. Definitely take a look at that report. It also sort of gives a different glimpse how we could measure the success. There is no one recipe, definitely. I think every public-private partnership has a right to define to itself its quantitative or qualitative factors, which should be measured. Because otherwise, we are talking about formality. And we do not want that public-private partnership becomes a formality in your system. We actually want to bring it and help public and private sector to fight financial crime, to disrupt financial crime, and to actually catch criminals and to identify illicit financial flows. Information sharing. Information sharing is the heart and the lungs of public-private partnership. Public-private partnership may have way different goals. For example, I would say that Lithuania is also quite unique in this case because we have a very vast and huge trainings program that is run by the public-private partnership in Lithuania. And that's quite a unique, I think, element, which is not very common within other public-private partnerships. However, intrinsically, we have to talk about information sharing. This is where the knowledge and expertise could kick in. This is where intelligence-led approach kicks in when it comes to developing public-private partnership. This is the artery of life. I'm naming it as that. We have two levels of information, strategic type and operational one. I have already talked with you about strategic type. We have trends types, typologies, risk indicators. Operational type of information is customer specific information, and that's sort of another part of the challenge that is very often have to be overcome by a lot of public-private partnerships, because usually we do not have legal provisions that would allow to share the information between public and private sectors, and even between private and private stakeholders about the specific customer, because it's bank secrecy, because we do not want to undermine the secrecy of the suspicious transactions reports, and etc. So there are different issues, and I will a little bit also touch upon this in a couple of slides. How to start sharing information. Whether you have formal or informal mechanism, that there is no difference here. I have three main pieces of advice, actually. How to start sharing information. First of all, start small, meaning do not involve all members of your financial market, whether it is formed by banks, fintechs, does not matter. Try to set it up, the information sharing format, forum, platform. I don't know, you call it as you wish. Define key stakeholders for the topic that you want to actually tackle. Let me use the example once again on the evasion of sanctions. That is a narrow scope of the topic, which can actually be tackled by specific stakeholders, for example, banks, fintechs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Financial Intelligence Unit, I don't know, customs authorities, or any other stakeholders that you think are relevant into tackling evasion of sanctions. Start with a smaller group. Build trust and confidence. Building trust and confidence takes time. It will take not 1 year, maybe not 2 years. And this requires consistency. I think this is my main remark here, is that you need to have consistency. You need to help, as for example, a part of the public-private partnership, you need to help them to build trust and confidence. So setting information sharing rules and arrangements can help actually to raise a little bit the level of trust and confidence between public and private stakeholders, because they will know exactly what kind of the rules. They will be sure that no information, for example, gets out of that working group, that it safely stays within the members of the group, and etc. So I think there are different mechanisms. This is only one of the examples. And unlock the full potential of strategic type of information. Even today, if you cannot share customer specific information, that's not the biggest issue to tackle currently. You can unlock the full potential of strategic type of data. Start sharing trends, patterns, typologies, risk indicators, even feedbacks on STRs, generalized feedback on STRs that could be shared by the Financial Intelligence Unit without naming customers or specific data. Sometimes I think we do not understand how much value lies within strategic type of data that can actually we build on until we have an opportunity to share the operational data. Operational information exchange requires these 6 criteria. This is at least what happens within the framework of the regulatory framework within European Union. And I think that sort of also depicts what's happening in other jurisdictions. You need legal basis, criteria, and purposes. You cannot share information just for sake of sharing. No one wants his or her personal data just to flow somewhere without any reason. You need to understand what is the purpose of sharing information, and usually every piece of legislation that you will find that enables private or public-private information sharing, you will find one provision that it is only and exclusively for ML or CFT purposes. No other purpose is allowed. If you can base the sharing of information with other financial institution or other stakeholder from the public sector on the basis of the fight against money laundering or terrorist financing, you will find there. If not, you are not allowed to share the information. I think another part to it when it comes to personal data and sharing customer specific data, we need to ensure we have safeguards. Safeguards that help us to ensure information security, data privacy, and definitely from the law enforcement side, the integrity of criminal investigations. The goal of the public-private partnership is not to undermine the integrity of the criminal investigations. It's on the other side to help actually law enforcement. However, we have also to be aware about the ways how it should be done. I think this is where the view and the opinion and the insights that comes from law enforcement is very important in order how to construct the mechanism of sharing customer specific data so that the integrity of criminal investigations will be not undermined. I have named a couple of examples here, and I think you will definitely have a time to go through the links that I put in the sources box. These are examples on how the information sharing is constructed. Let me tell you that in USA, we have legal provisions or the regulatory framework, which enables both public-private, and private-private information sharing. This is the Section 314A and Section 314B of the USA Patriot Act. I have put in the resources box in the fact sheets, which actually depicts perfectly what are the results of these formats and platforms of sharing information. Please take a look at those. GIMLIT, of course. I think the uniqueness of GIMLIT is that the National Crime Agency, as a law enforcement agency, under the Section 7 of Crime and Courts Act 2013, they have a very wide legal mandate to share the information. And this is quite unique because it's not the case in many other jurisdictions. When it comes to European Union, we do not have any specific provisions within the AML directive. And even with the current project of AML regulations, that would actually kick in the sharing of operational information or customer specific information. That is why we need local legal gateways on the member states level. So we have to sort of consider the general data protection regulation and as well as other elements, such as said before, the integrity of the criminal proceedings, the also the protection of the information which comes with the suspicious transaction reports and etc. So European Union is still going, I think, on that road, trying to maybe introduce some legislations within the AML regulation that should come in the future. Practical examples. The one from the Moneyval assessment of the United Kingdom, the London Bridge attack of 2017. And this example, I think, the best shows how financial institutions can be used when it comes to the sharing the operational data. And when it comes to financing of terrorism, when it comes to detecting and preventing terrorist attacks, we have to admit that we are not doing very well in this sort of topic because terrorist attacks, they happen. However, financial institutions can help law enforcement when they have to understand whether after the attack, there might be aftermath activities. Whether terrorists that actually conducted the terror attack, whether they are alone or there might be broader network. So I think this example depicts the best that financial institutions can help to identify those flow of transactions of money in order to understand whether after the attack already happened, unfortunately, whether there is a broader network that law enforcement should be worried about. And maybe this is the part of the information that law enforcement is not able to see. And the last one example is the Dutch public-private partnerships. Netherlands is a leader when it comes to public-private partnerships. They have, I think, 13 domestic sort of coordination cooperation bodies. 4 of them are completely focused on public-private partnerships. I have named just a few of them, but you can see, for example, they have even 3 public-private partnerships when it comes to abuse of nonprofit organizations for terrorist financing purposes. So I think this is a very good example that you don't need like one public-private partnership. Very freely, you can have different formats of collaboration between public and private sectors, and even you can have 3 or 4 tackled on a narrow scope topics, such as, for example, abuse of NPOs for terrorist financing purposes. Netherlands have sharing of information on both levels, on strategic and operational level, meaning they have an opportunity to unlock the potential not only on strategic type of data, but on the operational type of data as well. And to finish today, my presentation, I have depicted 3 main elements that should lead any public-private partnership, whether formal or informal, to success. Let's leave aside our high-sounding pronouncements, which is very, I think, present currently, where we hear a lot of fancy words, but unfortunately no actual actions. And let's have a focus on the impact that any formal or informal mechanism can have. I think impact is the main element that actually defines the value of the public-private partnership. And if you are part of the public-private partnership and you can actually name the impact that it had to your actions or to the resources you put to the fight financial crime, then public-private partnership is on the right track. Advocate for awareness and literacy. I think that's a crucial element on a political level, because we need national strategies on MLCFT. We need PPP being a comprehensive part of MLCFT system. So awareness and literacy on political level is crucial. And trust and confidence. It will take a lot of years to build trust and confidence so that different members of different sectors coming from public and private would actually trust each other and start sharing information, because in most cases, information sharing is not mandatory, it's on a voluntary basis. So you can have all the legislation in place, but if you won't have trust and confidence, then going forward, that would be very difficult to actually enable and unlock the full potential, whether of strategic or on operational data. So with that, I conclude my presentation.